Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chris McPherson Show, another daily dose coming to you. Your home of black and white in sport, no grey opinions here. And today we are diving into the Wallabies' first proper stop on the European tour, a trip to picturesque Udinese in Italy that looked like it might have been the perfect chance to build some momentum, but just ended with more frustration than fulfillment. We'll also have a bit of a whip around the rest of the weekend's action so far, from Scotland's close call against the All Blacks, England's winning streak rolling on with a dominant chalk up against the Fijians, and Ireland steadying the ship. Don't forget, of course, South Africa showing why they are still the benchmark in world rugby. Stick around because we'll also touch on what's coming up next weekend, some cracking matchups ahead, including our watch along, which will be for Ireland versus Australia next weekend in the early hours of Sunday. But before we jump in, make sure if you haven't already, hit subscribe on whatever platform you are tuned in on, whether that's YouTube or your favorite podcast platform, and give us a follow on socials to keep up to date in between our episodes. You can find us at The Chris Mack Show on your favorite social media platforms. But let's rip in. Let's talk some rugby and what's happened across the weekend. And let's start with that game in Udinese, Italy hosting the Wallabies. And what can you say? Another one that got away from the Wallabies. Australia fall 26-19 to Italy. And while it wasn't a complete train wreck, it wasn't far away. Another night where the Wallabies just couldn't string things together. The start was scrappy. It did have some tinges of promise early, but Italy took an early pair of penalties to grab the early lead, 6-0 up before the Wallabies finally managed to muscle over through a long, patient, rolling maul. It was a proper team try. Even some of the outside backs joining in, Harry Potter, Hannah Pasami getting into that shove on the rolling maul. They went back-to-back with tries as Angus Bell, who I think it's fair to say has been one of Australia's best all year, burrowed over for a second try, reaching out and slamming it down. We're 12-6 up after half an hour, and it felt like they'd settled and they were starting to turn things in the right direction. A late Italian penalty trimmed the lead back to 3 at halftime, 12-9, and you could sense there might have been a few nerves creeping in the change rooms at the break. Early in the second half, the Italians, they levelled it up again from the tee, discipline killing the Aussies again, before Carter Gordon all of a sudden dived on, or scooped up, I should say, a loose ball from the middle of the field that had popped free after Harry Wilson went into contact. Gordon pounced, showed a great turn of pace and dotted down, and all of a sudden it was 19-12, and it looked like the momentum breaking the game open for the Aussies was there. And then the turn. Italy go on the attack. Joseph Suoliti clips an Italian runner with a loose arm. Play went on under advantage, and Italy swung it wide to Lewis Liner. Yes, that name might be familiar. He is the son of Wallabies legend Michael Liner, the brother of Wallaby Tom Liner, who through his mother has claimed Italian heritage and playing for the Azzurri, scored in the corner. After the try was awarded, Suoliti was given the cheese, headed to the bin, and from there, the wheels started to wobble. Monty Ioane crossed to put Italy ahead, and with the crowd behind them, the Azzurri managed the game beautifully. They kept possession, chewed up the clock. Australia had one last chance late, but they lost the maul. Italy booted it into touch, and that was it. The wheels were completely off. 26-19 Italy. Back-to-back losses for the Wallabies against the Azzurri, admittedly a number of years apart, but still something that we never thought only a few short years ago would ever occur once, let alone twice in consecutive fashion. A fair few questions to answer for the Wallabies. And look, to be fair to them, it's not that they aren't trying. You can see some intent, but there's no rhythm. Too many penalties. The discipline is poor. Too many basic errors. When the heat comes on, they look unsure how to close a match out. They looked out on their feet late in that game, and you worry about what is to come with some big matches still in the schedule for this tour. Joe Schmidt certainly got a young group now with a number of players having transitioned out. And there is some potential there, no doubt. But there looks like there's some key pieces missing. Potential doesn't win you test matches on its own. Consistency, discipline, and composure need to come along with it. Right now, those things are still missing for the Aussies. This side isn't close to a shadow of what we saw here at home, a side that knocked over the British and Irish Lions, or in the Rugby Championship that knocked over South Africa and took it to the All Blacks a few months ago. They're certainly going to need all of these things coming together if they're to challenge the Irish, who are in form next week in Dublin. Meanwhile, in Edinburgh, Scotland nearly pulled off something historic. They were down 17-0 at half-time, and it looked like a history continuing to repeat itself as the All Blacks continued their dominant run against the Scots. The Scots, they came roaring back. Ashman and Stain both crossed, and Murrayfield was rocking. All of a sudden, 17-17, and it felt like maybe, just maybe, the Scottish might have had a chance to break the 120-year wait for a win over the All Blacks. But you know how New Zealand do what New Zealand do. Those All Blacks, Damian McKenzie came on from the bench, added a try, nailed a long-range penalty, and slammed shut the door of optimism for the Scots. The final score, 25-17, probably doesn't really reflect how close it was. Scotland matched them physically, they played brave, and they'll take plenty out of it. But the All Blacks still have that gear that very few other teams seem to reach when it matters. While over at Twickenham, England's march continues. 9 straight wins now, after a 38-18 result over Fiji. The Flying Fijians, they started hot. Some slick offloads in true Fijian style, some flair through the middle, but England stuck to their structure and trusted their bench. Cowan Dickey, Ellis, Genge, Jamie George, Henry Arundel, Mario Toji all found the try line. Fiji, to their credit, kept on throwing punches, but England's power and polish won out in the end. The old enemy are absolutely humming, even if it wasn't their best performance. Let's talk Ireland, Australia's next opponent. They bounced back after that tough loss to the All Blacks with a comfortable 41-10 win over Japan in Dublin. It was comfortable, but they were a bit rusty early. They had plenty of changes to their lineups. Once the forwards took control, the points started flowing, especially in the second half. 6 tries in total, a good confidence boost, and some things to work on heading into clashes with Australia and South Africa over the coming weeks. Coach Farrell won't be thrilled with some of those first half errors, but the response was professional and exactly what they needed as they eye off those next 2 big matches against Southern Hemisphere opponents. But now, before we wrap the weekend, let's talk about the big one in Paris. France versus South Africa, because this was special. The 2 sides clashing at the Stade de France. The rematch everyone wanted after that huge World Cup quarterfinal. The French, they came out firing with their typical flair, speed, energy. And when Luc de Jager saw red just before halftime with the game in the balance, it looked like the Boks were in deep, deep trouble. They were facing a hostile crowd, a French team that had the scent of blood in the air and had just 14 men to manage to try and come back against those French. But this is the Springboks. They just don't flinch. They absorbed wave after wave of attack, then found their composure, slowed the game down and started to suffocate the French right where it hurts. At the breakdown and in the collisions, South Africa lent right into their physicality superpower. Bit by bit, they turned the tide. Every carry purpose, every kick found grass, and the French flair started to fade. By the time the second half hit full swing, the Boks were dictating everything. Possession, territory, tempo, slicing runs from their backs when they got the opportunity. The power plays, those scrums, penalties, line-out drives, those brutal pick-and-go phases near the line, and, of course, the trademark South African mauls. Classic Springbok rugby. And when they hit that front, you could feel it was over. They controlled the clock, forced mistakes, and finally added salt to the wounds with their last try, completely silencing the French crowd. From 14 men under pressure to a 32-17 win in Paris, that is the mark of a champion side. It wasn't pretty at times, but it was pure South Africa. Resilience, relentlessness, and utterly ruthless. France will stew on that one for a while. They'll know they got oh so close. The Boks, though, they look every bit the standard setters still and again. They will be the mark that many measure up against as they continue on as we aim and eye the 2027 World Cup. We know one thing is for certain: the Northern Hemisphere autumn internationals are far from done in dishing up twists, turns, and some more epic tests. There is plenty more rugby to come. Starting tomorrow morning, 2 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time, Wales will take on Argentina in what should be a proper grind between 2 physical sides. Argentina continue to try and push their claims as a Tier 1 nation. Wales looking to return back to winning form and driving their way back up into being one of the better Northern Hemisphere sides. And we head to next weekend, a full slate of games again. Kicks off Saturday night as South Africa head to Italy. South Africa still the benchmark. Italy, full of confidence after that win over the Wallabies. That'll be at 11:40 Saturday night. We head to Sunday morning. England taking on the All Blacks at 2:10. That will be absolutely huge. Straight into Wales and Japan. The Welsh looking to continue on, hopefully off the back of an win over Argentina. They take on Eddie Jones's men, who will be looking for a major scalp. Then into France and Fiji. physicality, flair, and frivolity. It'll be all alive in France there. A lot of the Fijian boys call France home, so they will be right in their element. That will be a cracker at 7 o'clock Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Also at 7 o'clock, we will have our watch-along for the Chris McPherson Show. Ireland versus the Wallabies from Dublin. It's going to be huge. You can close out your weekend joining us. And if that's not quite enough rugby for you, then you can head to Monday in the early hours at 2 a.m. as Scotland host Argentina, looking to continue their momentum from taking the All Blacks to the wire. Grab your coffee, set the alarm. It is a huge weekend coming, and we cannot wait. This weekend, though, was a weekend full of reminders. South Africa looking ruthless. England continuing to roll to 9 straight wins. Ireland have steadied their course. The Wallabies, well, they're still searching for those missing pieces and in need of them fast. You can see some effort, some glimpses of promise, but until it turns into a consistent 80-minute effort of clinical rugby, it's just nowhere near enough at this level. Next weekend does bring 2 headline tests. That Australia and Ireland match will be big and blockbuster. But the headline, most likely, England, 9 wins in a row against the almighty All Blacks. Both those games are very capable of shaking up the rankings before the year's out, so keep an eye on them. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe to our show on YouTube or your favourite podcast platform. Follow along on our socials at The Chris Mack Show on your favourite social networks. And you're locked in for our watch-along from 7 a.m. on Sunday morning, the Wallabies in Dublin against Ireland. But in the meantime, thank you for tuning in. This has been another Daily Dose for the Chris McPherson Show, your home of the black and white of sport. No grey opinions here.